Hi everybody, it's Marie. Welcome back to my channel. I've got another process video for you today, and this one is for Mix Up That Song, and it's for the July challenge. So this month we had to use Damion Rice's Cannonball as our inspiration. Now I love the words, I love the song, but I found it really difficult to find inspiration from it. So like I did with the last one, I went through and I listened to all the lyrics and I picked out Stand a Little Closer to Me. So I then flipped through my photographs and I found this one of my son with a statue of the Gruffalo at Sherwood Pines Forest, and it just struck me that the words and this photograph went so well together, so I decided to pair them up. I'm using some wood grain paper as my background, and then I'm using a Bow Bunny Safari set of papers to embellish and to map my photographs on. They seem to fit really well with the kind of foresty theme, but as you can see there, I have got some paints and things out ready. I am going to make this a mixed media layout. So the first thing I've done there is I've matted my photograph onto white because I wanted it to pop off the page, and then I've cut a piece of that leafy paper to mat my photograph on, and then I've also cut some of that brown paper. Now it looks quite plain, but it has actually got words on like roar and growl and grrr and things like that, all to do with animal noises, I think. So I've used some of that again to just help that photograph pop off the page, and then I'm going to use some strips down that side. I and ah for quite a while as to whether to stick them on top or whether to pop them underneath, whether to do any sort of tearing, but in the end I think I do tear, but I just can't make my mind up right at that moment. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do my bit of mixed media. So I'm taking some texture paste there, and I've got some dark brown acrylic paint, and I'm just mixing them together with my palette knife. And then I decided to put a little bit more of the acrylic paint in there. I just want a bit of a darker colour. It takes a little while to mix it up, but it does give a really nice consistency of a material to work with. And I do try using that large palette knife, and I just decided it's too big and I'm going to end up getting the texture paste where I don't want it, so I get a smaller one out, and I do prefer that the shape of that one's much easier to use. And I just use a couple of pieces of washi tape to hold down the mask while I do the stenciling, because I don't want to end up with extra footprints or a big smudge. And I'm just going to place these kind of all over the page. Again, these footprints sort of fit with that theme of step a little closer to me, and also the fact that on the day that this photograph was taken, we were exploring, we were sort of traipsing around the forest and exploring, so it fits really nicely together. I think I do one more little bit of footprints. Yeah, pop another one there, just randomly all over. Learnt my lesson now as well. I made far too much of that texture paste up. Now what I'm doing is using a bit more of the acrylic paint, mixing some water in, and I am going to do what I once did when I was at school. I love doing this. Basically, you put watered down paint on and then just blow it with a straw, which is why you keep seeing my head in the shot, because I can't do it off camera. I'm a bit too close. I have to get a little bit closer in, so apologies that you can see the top of my head. And you just blow the paint around, and it kind of gives that impression of it splodging, and I liked it. I then also used the same sort of paint to do some splatter all over the page, just to add that depth and that texture, a little bit like the forest floor. So there's those lovely dots. Now there we go, I do decide to tear the edge off the paper and tuck those patterned papers underneath. It was quite important, because it was an edge that I needed, and it was a side edge and not a top, that I needed to get it exactly to be 12 inches wide, otherwise it wasn't going to fit in my album, and I didn't want to end up having to chop it down later. So I stick the leafy one on the brown, and then I use wet glue because I didn't think there was any way I was going to get the double-sided sticky tape to be where I wanted it. And I use the grid on my mat, again, a bit of washi tape to stick those bits of paper down while I stick that edge on. And I love the way that looks, just that poking out from the side there. Very happy with that. Just going to use now my trimmer to trim off a tiny little bit because it did go a bit too far, and then trim off to make sure that the page ends up being exactly 12 inches, and a little bit at the top just because they're not all quite the same length. They are now though. So that's all been straightened off, and here comes my photograph. I'm using one of the other sheets here. I'm going to just it's lots of signs, but I'm going to use this page to cut out some of the little arrows. I do like that circular one, and I do fussy cut it, but in the end it doesn't end up on the layout. It's just too big. It just doesn't seem quite right. And that other arrowy one that I've put in there is the wrong sort of colour. Quite often on layouts, when I get a bit stuck with a certain element, or I'm not quite sure where I'm going, I'll move on to something else and then I'll come back to it. So I decided at this moment I'm a bit stuck, so I've moved on to popping my title on, and I'm using these stickers. I've got lots of packets of these because I think I got them reduced somewhere, and I end up opening all 4 packets because I need that many teas, and there aren't enough teas in one pack. I think there's 3 teas in one packet, and I needed 4, and I'd used them from the 2 packets I'd already opened, so I'm nearly out of teas, unfortunately, so I have to be creative with my titles. So there's my title, Step a Little Closer to Me. Just popping it down that right hand edge. And that was always my plan, to put the title down there. So now I'm just going to start matting my photograph. Now I'm happy with where that title is sitting. Having a bit of trouble with my double-sided sticky tape, but it does come off eventually. And I'm just using a little bit of adhesive foam here to give my photograph a little bit of dimension, pop it up off the page. And then what I decided to do is, that leafy paper is crying out to be fussy cut, so I take a few of those leaves and I start just chopping around them, because I think it would look nice to have a load of those tucked in around the photograph. I don't make you watch me fussy cut them all, otherwise this video would be about twice as long, even at speeded up speeds. So I just do a few of those leaves and tuck them in. So I've got a little pile of them there, and I've got some more arrows that I'm going to attach on. I love this dotty paper, but I was trying to figure out how to do it, so I decided to make some little banners instead to stick out from the side. The way I do that is take a strip of paper, little snip in the middle of the short edge, and then you go from the corner to the top of your cut to create the kind of ribbon end. So just putting plenty of double-sided sticky on. Because there's texture paste on the page, it does mean that things don't stick quite as easily as they would if there wasn't the texture paste. And I've given up with my double-sided sticking on. I'm using my easy finger lift tape that I really like. It comes off so easily. There we go, got some more little banners going in there, and now I'm just using some wet glue. What I'm doing with these leaves is I'm putting them at different levels, so a couple of them I've tucked under the photograph, a couple I've tucked under the leafy paper, and then a couple I've tucked under the brown at the base. And I'm just checking all of my letters in my title there are stuck down and none of them are going to fall off. So then I just think I want a little bit more foliage, so I'm just going to fussy cut a couple more leaves, and they go in that bottom left hand corner of the photo. I do like to do clusters in 3s, so if I'm going to do clusters I do tend to try and do 3, and I just felt it needed another cluster of leaves. Again, I don't make you watch it all, there they are. And then I decide I'm going to use little bits of green washi tape just to add a bit more green onto that very brown background. So that's it. You can't quite see it from here, but it's a stripy green. So I put a little bit down there and a couple of pieces there as well. And then I get out some enamel dots. These are not quite the same green as the rest of the greens I've used on the layout, but it doesn't matter. They stand out. They look a nice contrast. So again, I do those in clusters of 3s. And then I've decided I want to do some just jumbled up twine. So I take a strand of green thread, kind of wind it up and tuck it in at various places, just to give a really a bit of a softer appearance to the edge of these photographs, and a bit more dimension, a bit more interest to the page. So that gets popped in there. And then I have another look at it, and I decide I'm going to just do a little bit more distressing to my main sheet of paper. So using some wet glue, so I just tear a little hole in the side there and have that leafy paper sticking out from the side. And then I decide to do a bit more at the top. But this time I decide to use the brown. Again, wet glue, stick it down, line it up. Perfect. And that's about it for my layout today. Thank you ever so much for watching and joining me on my channel today. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And I hope to see you back here again soon with more process videos. Thanks for watching.